Your grandparents wanted to own a home. Your parents wanted to own a home. You want to own a home too. The dream barely changed. The equation did. Today, buyers face higher price-to-income ratios, heavier monthly payments, thinner starter home supply, and less room to save while renting. Same dream. Different math. The cleanest comparison is age-matched ownership. Apartment List's 2025 census-based analysis gives a simple result. By age 30, about 55% of silent generation adults had become homeowners. For boomers, that figure was 48%. For Gen X, 42%. For millennials, just 33%. That is not a one-cycle anomaly. It is a multi-generation drift. The next signal is participation. The National Association of Realtors reported in November 2025 that first-time buyers made up just 21% of buyers, the lowest share on record. The same report put the median first-time buyer age at 40. That combination matters because a healthy market should keep recycling into younger households. Instead, entry is happening later and less often. That age headline still needs context. NAR's 40-year figure is not the only estimate. Survey-based and administrative data sets do not land in exactly the same place, so the honest read is not a single magic number. Administrative data sets come in younger. The New York Fed reported a median first-time buyer age of 33 in 2024. Redfin's 2026 analysis estimated the typical first-time buyer age in 2025 at 35. So the clean conclusion is not that everyone now buys at 40. It is that first-time buying is happening later, and even the lower estimates still sit well above the old norm. Before a buyer even reaches a mortgage application, the national affordability frame already looks different. The simplest measure is home price divided by household income. In older U.S. data, a rough baseline was around 3.2 times income. By 2019, before the pandemic spike, the national ratio was already about 4.1. In 2022, it hit roughly 5.6. By early 2025, the ratio had improved, but only to around 4.8 to 5.0. So yes, the market cooled from the 2022 extreme. But it never returned to the older baseline. The affordability spine stayed structurally elevated. Price to income tells you the market is expensive. Monthly payment tells you whether a household can actually carry it. That is why the mortgage equation matters. Payment rises when principal is higher, when rates reset upward, or when the term offers less relief than buyers expect. NAR's first quarter 2025 affordability release put the national median existing single-family price at $402,300. With 20% down, the typical monthly mortgage payment was $2,120. Families were spending 24.4% of income on that mortgage payment. That figure is only principal and interest. Once taxes and insurance are added, the real carrying cost is higher. Even after the 2022 peak eased, the buyer experience still felt structurally expensive. Now add the entry ticket. The same NAR report showed the median first-time down payment at 10%, matching the highest level recorded since 1989. The hurdle is the cash required before you buy. 22% of first-time buyers used gifts or loans from family and friends. Repeat buyers had a median down payment of 23%, and 30% of them paid all cash. This is a split market. Some households enter with housing wealth, while others are still trying to build from zero. The standard advice sounds simple: rent longer and save. But the Federal Reserve's 2024 SHED survey shows why that often fails in practice. Among renters, 68% said they rent because they cannot afford a down payment. 49% said they cannot afford the monthly mortgage payment. 42% said they cannot qualify for a mortgage. The same households are often failing several tests at once. This is where the equation becomes circular. According to Harvard's Joint Center for Housing Studies, 22.7 million renter households were cost-burdened in 2024. That was 49% of all renters and the fourth consecutive record year. 12.1 million were severely burdened, meaning more than half of income was going to housing. That is the savings trap. The households that most need to build a down payment are often the households whose cash flow is already being consumed by rent. The burden is worst for lower-income renters, but it climbs the ladder. In JCHS data for 2023, 83% of renter households earning under $30,000 were cost-burdened. For renters between $30,000 and $44,999, the burden rate was 70%. For the lowest income group, median residual income after rent and utilities was just $250 a month. That is not enough to build a serious down payment quickly. High ratios and high payments are symptoms. The deeper problem is supply. Freddie Mac estimated the U.S. housing shortage at 3.8 million units as of the end of 2020. Its November 2024 update still estimated the market was short 3.7 million units through the third quarter of 2024. Even after several years of more building, the country had barely reduced the gap. Affordability did not become difficult only because rates spiked in 2022. The shortage is also about what stopped getting built. Freddie Mac found that entry-level single-family construction averaged 418,000 homes a year in the late 1970s. By 2020, that figure was down to just 65,000. The share of entry-level homes in overall construction fell from 40% in the early 1980s to around 7% by 2019. From January 2000 to July 2024, entry-level home prices grew 63% more than high-end home prices. The first rung got thinner and more expensive at the same time. Then the market added another constraint. During the low-rate years, millions of owners refinanced into mortgages around 3%. When rates later moved above 6%, selling became financially painful. In the second quarter of 2025, Redfin found 80.3% of mortgaged homeowners still had rates below 6%. More than half were below 4%. About 1 in 5 were still below 3%. NAR's 2025 buyer and seller profile found the median seller had lived in the home for 11 years, an all-time high. Student debt matters, but it needs honest framing. The New York Fed put outstanding student debt at about $1.595 trillion in the first quarter of 2024. Experian put the average borrower balance at $37,797 in March 2024. The strongest causal paper from the Federal Reserve finds that a 10% increase in student debt causes a 1 to 2 percentage point drop in home ownership during the first 5 years after school exit. That is meaningful. But debt is still only one headwind layered on top of prices, payments, rent, and supply. This is bigger than the timing of a purchase. The 2022 survey of consumer finances showed the median homeowner had a net worth of $396,200. For renters and other non-homeowners, the median was $10,400. Urban Institute's analysis of the same data found the median homeowner-renter wealth gap had reached almost $390,000 in 2022. That does not prove homeownership alone creates all of the wealth. Selection matters. But the mechanism is real. Ownership can turn shelter into forced saving, equity accumulation, and appreciation. Over 33 years, Urban Institute found the median owner-renter wealth gap increased by 70%. Housing is shelter. It is also balance sheet leverage. So what changed? Not the desire for home ownership. The equation. Younger households inherited higher price-to-income ratios, heavier payment math, a more expensive down payment hurdle, structurally high rent burdens, less starter home supply, and a resale market partially frozen by low-rate lock-in. Entry now happens later, with less margin for error and under a taller stack of constraints than previous generations faced. Same dream, different math.